Well, that kid's good, isn't he?
He's got talent.
Yeah, I like his work. Everybody, that's a NSX Josh Ennis on YouTube remixing the WCW Crow entrance theme. Thank you, Josh, for letting us do that, and we'll plug your stuff here, man. But that guy's great, man. I really like what he's doing.
Kind of wish he had done the Surfer Sting or maybe Seek and Destroy in that way. That'd have been kind of cool.
Yeah, or the TNA version. I think that'd be cool. Because I thought the TNA version was pretty good too.
Yeah, I like
But
the TNA Sting. Okay, here's
yep.
a question: which Surfer Sting music do you prefer? Do you prefer the dun 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 dun, dun or do you like the
that
Man
one.
Called Sting? Yeah, the
No,
first
I
one.
like the first one.
Me
Yeah,
too. Me too. That's
down.
down,
Dun, 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 dun.
down.
Do you
I
think
love that
that
one.
is a copyrighted song? Would we
Did
get
we
nuked
just?
for that one?
Oh, I bet it's a music library thing. I bet that's not copyrighted.
Let me Sting original theme song.
It's not his
Down,
original.
down.
It's actually a second theme song.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay, here. Let me.
Wait,
Here,
people
I will
post
just
that on
play.
YouTube. Why would we get nuked when we're just playing something that's already on YouTube that's not
That's
owned
what
by
I
people
thought.
who own the song.
That's what I thought. But here, let's see. This is my favorite one. Yeah, it's awesome.
I fucking love this. It's like Ultimate Warriors, but I always thought that one had a little bit more personality to it. Because Sting just had a little more personality a lot more personality than the Ultimate Warrior.
He had a lot more of a lot of things than the Ultimate Warrior.
Just a lot more. Yeah. He's just a lot more. I was so disappointed when because they played the Man Called Sting from like, God, the end of beginning of 93 up through like, I guess it's early 96. So I guess it's not that long, but it's long enough that it's like etched in my mind and I hated it every time it was on. That was the worst. That Slam Jam album sucked.
Yeah, it did. It did suck.
I kind of like the Rude one though. I like the Rude one. The rest of it, I hate it.
Yeah, but yeah, hey everybody, this is Overtime with Mike and JD. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the Patreon subscribers. If this gets nuked on YouTube, then I'll just download the video and put it straight onto Patreon because Patreon doesn't give a fuck. They're cool with us just putting up copyrighted material. I uploaded an entire episode of TNA Impact from 2007 that you and I did our first ever like watch along with, or the Christmas episode.
That was
like
fun.
Our Mystery Science Theater. That never, like, the video of that never made it anywhere. And I just uploaded it to Patreon. I was like, well, I guess I'll just try this out, see if we get in trouble. And then sure enough, we did. So sometimes I just got to take a chance.
Cross fingers. Worked out last time. That was fun. I enjoyed doing that. We should do something like that again.
Yeah. Well, so because we've done like several matches and stuff like that, and
but not like a show.
It's been a while since we watched a full show.
Yeah, that was enjoyable, especially because it was so stupid. But it was like a fun stupid.
Yeah. It was like fun stupid. I think
it was fun dumb.
Fun dumb. Kind of like 80s movies. You know what I mean? It was like
that. It was like watching Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah,
it was like doing Mystery Science Theater actually.
Yeah, it was our rendition of Mystery Science Theater, but just for wrestling. So this is our Sting retrospective. We're going along some of our favorite feuds. And what we're going to talk about today is his feud with Cactus Jack and Mick Foley. Yeah, Cactus Jack and Mick Foley. They didn't actually have that many matches against each other, and they really only had two singles like pay-per-view matches. One was in 1992 at Beach Blast, and the other one was at Lockdown 2009. Now they did have like a no surrender match. It was on WCW Power Hour in 1991. That was like their first televised match, but that was just on WCW Power Hour, just on one of their weekend shows, and it was actually a really good match too. But I thought I'd just focus on the two pay-per-view matches.
Mick Foley wholeheartedly gives Sting credit for, like, I hate using the wrestling term of giving him the rub because I think he could be more poetic with it, but like bringing him to prominence. Like and again, it was supposed to be a Monster of the Week thing, kind of like what we're hoping TNA is doing with Josh, bringing in Simon fucking Nim. I'm not letting this go. I'm never ever gonna let this go.
Man.
That was what it was supposed to be, but like the team of Cactus Jack and Abdul the Butcher was just so great that they just kept it going. Like, because Luger was like, "Oh, thanks for the title. I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
You're out of dates on me. I'm just not going to work for the rest of the year and keep your
Well,
belt." And
yeah.
Fry went, "That's bad. That's very bad."
Yeah, and so, but Foley had been in WCW before that, and I think he took like a little over a year off where he worked the Indies. He actually worked in the Tri-State, like what was the name of the company?
Tri-State Wrestling Association, Joel Goodhart. It was the predecessor of ECW. They were running shows at what would be called the ECW Arena, what's currently called the 2300 Arena. I cannot remember what its actual title was back then, but the Bingo Hall,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember what it was called back then.
Yeah, Joel Goodhart was the guy who kind of got the hardcore thing going in the Northeast. Didn't quite last, but yeah, he was there. He was also in Global, right? He was also in the dying days of World Class. He might have been.
He went to Japan too. He went to IWA to Japan, and then he did some stuff with Joe Pedicino, and then wasn't he with Herb Abrams too during that year? Or was that later in the 90s?
I think his stuff with Herb is only the 90. I could be wrong on this. I haven't looked in a long time.
Okay.
Because Herb Abrams, he took a big break, and then he had that one Blackjack Brawl pay-per-view where he fights Snuka in the Falls Count Anywhere match. And that was in 94. And it was like Herb, like his comeback show that lasted once. So that was right after he left WCW for the second time. So that's I'm not. He might have done stuff in 1990 for UWF. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I got to look back into that.
Yeah,
but yeah, he bounced around the Indies in 90 after leaving WCW.
Yeah, he actually did what I always challenge people to do when you leave like a bigger promotion. It's like if you're gonna go out there and make a fucking name for yourself. And he did. He had a pretty good feud with Eddie Gilbert in that Tri-State area there at the 2300 Arena. And he actually get a call from Magnum. This is from his book, Have a Nice Day. I actually did some research and I pulled out his book, Have a Nice Day, and to get some of these details about his return to WCW and his feud with Sting. We said Magnum called with the news. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so he's still the best wrestling book ever written.
Yes, I would agree. Magnum called with the news that would change my life. I should probably point out that for the previous few weeks, I've been in touch with Kevin Sullivan, who had gathered together another band of misfits and thought that I'd be a perfect fit. Magnum says, I've been talking with Dream and we think we've come up for a spot for you. And Cactus says, really? Is it with Kevin's guys? And Magnum says, no, we'd like to put you in a program right away with Sting. And then he goes, Sting, man, that was like hitting the jackpot. Sting was the number one man in WCW, a well-built, charismatic athlete with spiked, bleached hair and a painted face. The Stinger was not the greatest interview in the world, but his athletic ability and enthusiasm usually made up for it. Sadly, Sting's marquee value had dropped slightly over the past several months due to poor opponents and lackluster feuds, and that's where I came into the picture. And then later, he said, I learned that this run with Sting, as well as my stint in WCW, were planned to be short-lived. The office, knowing of Sting's slightly shriveling value, hoped to feed him a string of monster heels in rapid-fire succession. Jim Ross, who apparently had been trying to sell Dusty on me for quite a while, was able to volunteer me for this limited role. It was thought that a quick conquering of so many monsters in such a short time would boost Sting's image, enabling him to draw more money with a real wrestler. So
I'll say this.
That's got him back.
We should all have a friend as good as Jim Ross.
Yes.
Because Jim Ross fought for him twice and fought hard to get Mick Foley jobs because he believed in him. Right?
Yeah.
JR takes a lot of shit, but he's definitely a guy that it sounds like he's a guy that if he's your friend, he is your friend. And we should all have a friend like that.
Well, and Jim Ross was always of the opinion, it's like, man, all you need to do is get a jersey. And once you get the jersey, then you just need to go maximize your minutes. And he relates everything to football, but that's so true. And I just remember like when I was playing football, I was like, man, if they would just let me in the game, I could go in there and wreck shop. Now, of course, I did not do that, but that's like, you can't do anything from the sidelines. You have to actually get in the game. And that was always kind of like my motto. It's like that's been my motto in work too. Like once I get out, like once I get myself involved in a project or involved in something, then I can get in there and succeed.
Well, Michael, I did play high school football. It started my junior year. I was all summer camp. I was behind a sophomore who knew I was better than him, but he was bigger than me. And then I worked myself into a starting spot. First game of the year, we beat the number 3 team in state my junior year. And I earned my starting spot because I had a hell of a game. And I started every game after that. And I was a pretty good high school football player. Humble brag done.
Yeah. Yep. You Wally pipped him.
Who is Wally Pip? I don't know that story.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
I don't know this.
I'm going to teach you a little something about baseball. Wally Pip was the guy who was starting over one Lou Gehrig, and then he missed a game.
Oh,
put in Lou Gehrig, and he never got his spot back.
That is a great trivia note that I'm disappointed I don't know.
I'm
mad at myself for not knowing that. That's a great one, actually.
Yeah, look up Wally Pip, kids. And there's been kids. There's similar stories out there, but yeah, the Wally Pip is always the one that people come up with. But
opportunities, man. Opportunities come. You got to take advantage of them. And Mick Foley is a guy who every single time someone gave him an opportunity, he took advantage of it. I know the Dusty and Vince, these guys never saw him, but I remember the first time I saw Cactus Jack was the fall of '92, and I was immediate. And he was stuck as a manager at the time because he was hurt, and I was immediately like drawn to the guy. I'm like, this dude's the fucking man. Like, he was a heel. I'm like, but there was just something about God. I love the Cactus Jack character. He just so
popped
cool.
off. He just popped off the screen, and he was like scary. And then like eventually he stopped being scary. He just started being funny and just interesting and entertaining. But he could always flip that switch back into being scary. He was like the coolest.
He's one of the best performers in wrestling history, man. Mick Foley's good.
Hands down. So he has a great return match where he beats one Larry Santo, and he hit all his trademark moves. Basically, elbow off the apron to the floor, his flip dive, the double arm DDT that he says he blatantly stole from. Oh fuck! I already forgot. Who did he get the double arm DDT from?
Oh my god!
Damn it! I deleted it from my notes, and he says it so many times in the book. Japanese star, All Japan.
I know. Hang on, I'm a bad JD.
Yeah, no, bad Mike, because I just read it today. I just read it today. So anyway, he has that great match. He impresses everybody. He was asked to then come up to Philadelphia. And now at the same time, Nikita Koloff quits the company over refusing to job to Sting on all the house shows. And Sting had no opponent for the next few house shows. He shows up and he meets with Sting, and he says he and Sting had a conversation about what they wanted to do. And as Mick told him his ideas, Sting was stunned. Sting says,
"Oh my god, it's Kenta Kobashi! I can't believe I couldn't think of that off the top of my head,
dude. I don't know why I was thinking. I was gonna say Kawada, and then I was like, no, it's Misawa. And I was just like, no, it's Kenta Kobashi.
Kenta Kobashi. Now that one of us can think of Kenta Kobashi,
it's not like he did the Burning Hammer, though. Come on, but
anyway. He did do the Burning Hammer.
No, it's not like Mick Foley did the Burning Hammer.
He could do the Burning Hammer if he tried.
I know. But he was more known for the Burning Hammer. Well, I mean, double arm DDT was really his too. So, but anyway, so he tells Sting all his ideas, and Sting's stunned. He says, "Do you really expect Sting?" And this is what Sting is saying to Mick. He says, "Do you really expect Sting, third person, a guy who's been pushed on top for 5 years, to go 50-50 with a guy who hasn't been on TV?" And Mick says, "Yes, because I feel that with 1 month of TV exposure and 1 month of interviews, I can get over, therefore be in a better position to get you over. Let's set up one thing, and if it doesn't get a reaction that you like, we won't do anything else. If it does, we'll work from there." They end up having a great match. Then when he got backstage, Sting is excited he actually found someone he could look forward to wrestling. He shook my hand, and I can honestly say that we never had another problem after that. He's someone I consider one of my all-time favorite opponents. And then I put this in bold. I'd like to lock up with him one more time before I'm through. I think this book was published in like 1999. And then of course, 10 years later, he would actually get that opportunity in TNA, which, that's how we come full circle.
So I get where Sting's coming from on this, because this is 91 Sting. And this is, we have litigated the Black Scorpion to death, but this guy had been just laced with terrible creative after terrible creative. So I get why Sting's like, you're bringing in this random dude from the indies who was here a year ago as, like, remember when they brought Cactus in the first time, his gimmick was he was a job guy who would beat up his opponents after the match. Right? And then he was doing stuff with like Norman the Lunatic. I mean, that's a big jump in WCW from doing stuff with Norman the Lunatic to working with Sting on top. So like, I kind of get the Stinger's hesitance, but again, all Mick Foley needs is a chance. That's it.
Yep. So they have the great match. And this is all on the house shows. And at this point, Cactus's return hasn't been on television. So fast forward. No, excuse me. Oh my gosh. So fast forward, we go to the Clash of the Champions Fall Brawl. Sting is wrestling one Johnny B. Bad. And the finish saw a box brought out to ringside.
You almost said a Brock. That was a Freudian slip Brock. With Johnny B. Bad.
Yep. Finish saw a box brought out to ringside. If it was Brock, he'd be running. Bad hit Sting with a shot to the ribs and stared at the box. Then Sting got up and he stared at the box. They both stood there like they didn't know what they were doing, which I guess got the box over and ruined any pretense that they cared about the wrestling match. Of course, this is from The Observer, by the way. I should state that. Then Sting gave Bad a sloppy inside cradle for the pin. Cactus Jack comes out of the box, knocked over Teddy Long, blew by Johnny B, and attacked Sting, complete with an elbow off the middle rope onto Sting, who was on the floor. And then the Kenta Kobashi double arm DDT. So Dave actually writes that in his Observer.
We're such dipshits.
Yeah, before a few faces came out for the save. And then, of course, Mick wrote that in his book that he blatantly stole it from Kenta Kobashi, too, by the way. I don't know why I didn't have it in my earlier notes. Maybe I just didn't want to, like, say it twice. But, yeah, so do you remember him at this Fall Brawl coming out of the box? And that was, like, his big triumphant return to WCW?
James Cornette, anyone who comes out of a box is instantly over. And then they replay the angle at the November Clash, which is the same one where Steamboat comes back, with Abdullah. Because Medusa comes out looking excellent, by the way, and does a belly dancer thing to like entice Sting, and Sting being the dumbest baby face of all time. Like, yeah, Medusa, hey. And then Abdullah comes out of the box and beats his ass too. So, I mean, like, it was a good, honestly, I quite enjoyed the gift box angle myself because I don't know, Sting's always dumb. Like, at least AEW Sting isn't dumb. Sorry.
I don't know if it was at the same Fall Brawl or if it was a different show, but there was another one where Cactus Jack is being interviewed by Paul E. And then a box came out and Cactus thought it was Abdullah the Butcher and opened it to find Sting. So Sting's coming out of a box too. And then they had a brawl and then Cactus took some bumps.
I want to say that was a Danger Zone that was on Saturday night. I think I want to say October-ish of 91.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
So
I like this shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're a big fan of the Kip Fry era.
I am a fan of the Kip Fry era, actually.
Yeah.
Is this Kip or is this the end of Herd? I don't remember if this is the end of Herd. I think
this is 91 because when they get to Beach Blast, that's when Bill Watts had taken over by Beach Blast the next year. So this was the end of 91. Of course, they have the Halloween Havoc match, the Thunderdome, whatever it was called, the Chamber of Horrors.
The Chamber of Horrors match, my friend. The
Chamber of Horrors, which we've already litigated on this podcast before. So
do you know how many Hall of Famers are in this god-awful match? It's staggering.
Cactus, Abdullah, Sting, the Steiners, Scott Hall, Diamond Dallas. No, not Diamond Dallas Page. Not Diamond Dallas Page.
Who else? Vader,
yes. And then El Gigante, wasn't he in it?
No, El Gigante is not a Hall of Famer. He is in the match.
He's not a Hall of Famer, but he is in the match.
Not a Hall of Famer. Yeah, it's
there's 8. So I counted the Steiners once, but there was 2 of them. Yeah,
there's 2 of them. Yeah, but it's epic, the talent in this shitball match. Oof. That was that's actually WCW starts turning around for the better at this point, but by that they hadn't quite turned around yet. But it was getting better. It was getting better.
I'm gonna tell a quick story of a house show match. I wasn't there. This is just Mick tells the story, and I like hearing Mick tell stories. So this is just one of his stories that he was at a house show match in like towards the end of like 1991, and I can't remember if it was Atlanta or Charlotte, but it was one of those places. And he has this cage match with Sting, and right before that was the big fight between Sid Vicious and Brian Pillman, where Sid Vicious comes to attack Brian Pillman with a squeegee, right? With a big squeegee. Well, then later they're having this cage match. Now, Cactus is not a made guy, but because he's in the main event with Sting, he can get away with some shit. So during the match, to mess with Sting, he actually pulls out some weapons, and one of his weapons was a squeegee. Now, of course, Sting knew this ahead of time. He would later reveal, like, oh yeah, Sting was in on it. And Sting sold it like he'd pulled out a gun, and he was like deathly afraid of the squeegee. And Cactus was chasing him with a squeegee, and he would hit Sting with the squeegee and Sting would sell, and then all of a sudden Sting reversed it and then took the squeegee away and started hitting Cactus with the squeegee. And the whole thing, the audience has no idea what's going on. It was just the thing to make the guys in the back laugh because this was on a house show. It wasn't even on television. So they, like, needless to say that they had a lot of great chemistry and they loved working together.
That's an awesome story. It's very similar to the story with Owen Hart where they're beating each other up with popcorn. Like,
yeah.
house shows are fun.
Yeah. So we get to the match that I wanted to talk about. So this was one of their second televised singles match. Foley calls this one of the biggest matches of my life, a Falls Count Anywhere match against Sting at the 1992 Beach Blast. The match took place at the Mobile Civic Center. Not what most would call a tropical paradise, and in truth, we were several miles from water. I had trained hard for this match, and in doing so, it almost lost most of my Abdullah weight. So he said, also, I'd immersed myself in mental visualization for this match, and I had seen it in my head 1,000 times. The match turned out better than I had even hoped. The Stinger was up for it, as he had been a while since we had wrestled against each other. The timing was on, the pacing was great, and some of the transitions were breathtaking. Even Ross, the new color man, Jesse the Body Ventura were on top of their game. I lost the match, but didn't give a damn. As George Costanza might have said, baby, I'm back. Even Bill Watts was happy. Gentlemen, he told us, it doesn't get any better than that. For years, I considered that to be the greatest match in my career. Sting was genuinely flattered to hear me say that, and he'd occasionally ask me after other big matches, was mine still your favorite? I think he was actually saddened when he'd heard another one had replaced it. It was almost as if we were the Queen and Snow White, and the magic mirror broke the bad news. So, yeah, like the match was so good, even Bill Watts' crusty old ass liked it.
Dude, that's a great match, man. I mean, like, and why wouldn't Sting like working with Foley? You've got a guy who's a monster, but his entire gimmick as a monster is he's going to take a tremendous amount of punishment. So that means he's going to flip and fly and kill himself to get you over. And Sting, who had really come up under Flair, has this great understanding of what a heel can do through work to make a babyface look great. And Sting is a more giving babyface than a lot of top baby faces in his position have been. Like, oh my God, we're watching these clips right now. And Cactus Jack takes this bump because WCW had this ramp, right? And Sting, they do like the Irish whip spot, but and then Cactus takes a back body drop on this hardwood ramp, and it's just gnarly. Oof.
Yeah. It was, and Cactus. I mean, that's probably why he's moving around so bad as he is right now, because he would take all these bumps. He would take these bumps like off the apron to the floor. And this was the Bill Watts era where they wouldn't actually let you have pads on the floor because he felt like it made them look like they weren't tough. And then Cactus was really probably the only guy that liked that because it made his stuff look even more real, even though, it's supposed to be fake, bro.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about those. I don't know how much cushion those little throw mats actually gave people. Like Sting's working, like again, this is stuff that was just not being done in pro wrestling in the US in 1992, right? Like other than Bret Hart stuff in this era and the other channel, you wouldn't see this action, right? Like they just didn't have matches that were that hard hitting unless it was, Savage or Hart. Other than that, not really, Like it really made this stand out. Really, this is why I like WCW in this era, because the creative kind of sucks, but the matches themselves are just they're high impact and violent at times for 1992 TV. It's good shit though.
Yeah. So Dave goes on to write in his Observer, Sting pinned Cactus Jack in an explosive match, Falls Count Anywhere on the Gulf Coast. So they never quite made it to the beach, but it was the best match of the card.
Good stuff.
And he said Cactus has a lot of guts, but you simply can't do matches like this very often and enjoy a lengthy career. But he gave the match up 4.5 stars, man.
A very early Dave version of I don't know if I like this. 4.5 stars.
He's given several AEW matches. I hated this match. 5 stars.
Yes, that happens a lot. Dave. But I love this match. I think it's a lot of fun. This is a good show, actually. This is also the show we get a 30-minute Iron Man match with Rude and Steamboat. That's actually
that's
super underrated. It's a good. This is a good card. Like I know we shit in the Bill Watts era, but this is a really good show. Like it's actually a really good show. I like Beach Blast 92.
Yeah, it's a very fun show. I think everybody should go out of the way to check it out. Now after this match, like he's kind of a made guy, but they never really You know, he got pushed up. Well, he turned babyface eventually because his matches were so awesome. It's like, how do you boo this guy? And then he gets put into. He
gets
does,
hurt.
yeah.
So what happens is, okay, so shortly after this match, Cactus Jack gets hurt and he becomes like the Barbarian's manager for like and Jake. He's managing Barbarian and Jake Roberts by the end of 92, because I believe this is when he tore his abdomen. And that's a brutal, painful injury. So he misses, I want to say, about a month after this match it happens. So he misses almost all of the latter half of 92. And then in 93, he comes back and they do the angle at the Thunder Cage where they need another guy, and it's between him and Orndorff. And then Harley and all them turn on Cactus Jack, and then Cactus Jack babyface turns. And the crowd's like, fuck yeah, we get to cheer Cactus Jack now. It's great. People dog on this. I love this era of WCW.
Honestly, I feel like you and I have done so many podcasts on this era of WCW because like both of us have such a passion for it. Yeah, it's so great. I think so many people just kind of missed out on this, like this lost era, like and both the Kip Fry and the Bill Watts era, like 91 to like there was a lot of good stuff during that time, man.
Even the early Bischoff stuff that when Only comes back, I mean, there's some, but there's also some stuff that's actually a lot of fun. Like I praised last week on this show, I praised the Flair Vader match, like the Starrcade with Flair and Vader, where the whole psychology behind the match is, well, Ric Flair is gonna die tonight. And, it's like that's the whole match, and it's so great. Like I do. I mean, I got a super soft spot for this era of WCW, man. It's just because of stuff like this. Like it was so different than what was going on in the other channel. We need more of that.
Yeah, so he ends up turning babyface. He has a feud with Vader, and then after the feud with Vader, he kind of gets pushed down the mid card. Has some, I think he gets put in like the tag team division. Then eventually, he's out of WCW. He goes back to This is at this point he's working ECW and he's working Herb Abrams. He's doing death matches in Japan while waiting to get his deal with WWF at the time. And then he becomes one of the biggest stars in the world in WWF with his Mankind character, and then eventually wins the world title in 1999. And then that's when this book comes out that I was just referencing. And then lo and behold, 10 years later, he's completely done with the WWE. He's kind of fed up. He leaves the company. He has every couple of years he would do his comeback matches. Like he did a comeback with Randy Orton, and then he left a couple of years, and then he comes back with Edge, and then he left, and then he came back and he did a feud with Ric Flair, and that feud with Ric Flair really soured him on WWE. He ends up becoming an announcer. He does some GM stuff, and eventually he leaves the promotion, and he signs with TNA. Now, of course, TNA brought him in only to be like the general manager or whatever, like a commissioner, but it didn't take long to get Foley back in the ring because they were enticing him with a match versus Sting. And he had remembered his match from 1992, and he'd always wanted to do that again, as he'd stated in his book in 1999. And in fact, because of this, he got so excited, he kept basically a diary and a journal, and he turned that journal into a book called Countdown to Lockdown, which was chronicling his journey into the match with Sting. And I do. Yeah, it's actually, I have never read it. I read the Hardcore Diaries, but I never read the Countdown to Lockdown. But he was just so into the match. He'd actually gotten himself in the best shape he'd been in for a little bit, which at this point in his life is still not very good shape. His knees are shot, his hips shot. He can barely move. Honestly, TNA should not have put him in the ring, but he really wanted to do it. And of course, they wanted that money. This is coming from Dave Meltzer. This is talking about TNA Lockdown. So the poll results, in the best, they got 19 votes for best match and 12 votes for worst match. So they're in Philadelphia. It said going in, the big story should have been that Mick Foley as heel Cactus Jack was going to shock everyone and win the TNA title from Sting. I don't think it was a title change most expected because they saw Foley as a guy they like, but no longer took seriously as a viable main eventer, except for a once a year or so shot. That probably explains why Foley has become so motivated of late, dropping weight and cutting great promos and going on the road even more, house shows and even wrestling on television. He has the desire back and motivation, and I get the impression he really likes the people he's working for. And he did state that in his book that he really liked Dixie Carter and them, and determined that the one final piece of his legacy in the business will what in reality could be his most important, being a key part of making a second promotion viable and stable for the long term. The problem with them turning back the clock to 1999 and Foley as world champion is his knees and back are shot. You really have to suspend disbelief not to see it. Foley can work as a nostalgia act, but as a regular performer, the promos can make you want to see the match, but the match has to be very carefully put together. He puts together a good story of a match, taking a few bumps and trying to make it work. It's a mixed bag, but if you think you pull it's a mixed bag if you think you pulled it off. My gut is that making him champion is probably good for ratings, for a little bit of interest, but it's not a direction you can go with long term. And I'm guessing TNA is well aware of it. So did you watch any of Foley's TNA run back in this time?
No, I was checked out. I was totally checked out of pro wrestling in this era. Like I knew Mick Foley went to TNA. Like I was on Twitter in 2009, so I'm pretty sure I was aware of it. But I mean, I think that I probably would have written it off as a joke at the time because he had been retired for so long. And I did remember watching the Foley Edge stuff and feeling like, it probably should be done at this point. So I never gave it a fair chance. Because I was out on this, I didn't know this. Did Foley actually win the title in 2009?
He did. He won in this match. He beat Sting for the title in this match. Yeah.
I honestly did not know that Mick Foley was the TNA World Champion. I honestly did not.
Yeah. And I think they did it more as shock value. I don't think it was ever meant to be the plan. Of course, I mean, fucking Vince Russo was booking at the time. Yeah. So I mean, of course you had to do, you had to do like screwy stuff, but yeah, it was, go ahead.
Tell me about this match, because I never saw it, and I need you to tell me what this match was like.
Well, it was a difficult watch because especially it's two of my favorites, Sting and Mick Foley. But at the same time, they did have some entertaining moments in it, and there was a lot of danger in the match because it was Mick Foley and he's doing stuff that you could tell that he shouldn't be doing, that his body shouldn't be doing. They went 15 minutes, and I think about 6 minutes in, Foley was pretty well gassed. But to see a guy gassed and still work through it, I thought was good. Unfortunately, they did what I always hate anybody to do, because Mick Foley was like the authority figure on the television, which is like something that's been recycled over and over and over again for fucking way too long. He was the authority figure in the match, and he tried to do the Montreal spot. And like at that point, I was fucking out. He tried to convince Earl Hebner, who was the referee. He put Sting in the Scorpion Deathlock. He tried to convince Earl Hebner to call the match, and then Earl Hebner, who had been heel babyface for like the previous 7 or 8 years, he'd flopped back so many times, didn't do it at this point, and so that was pretty silly stuff. But I think overall it was kind of fun to watch. So Mick Foley pinned Sting in 15:55 to win the TNA title. At no point, so it was announced you could win by pin, submission, or escaping the cage. At no point on television was any of this advertised. Both got a mixed reaction. Foley punched himself over and over, opening a pre-existing cut, and was bleeding heavily before the match started over the eye. And at this point, I go to his book, and because I wanted to go to where he's just talking about the match specifically, not really the build up to the match, because that was the previous like 15 chapters. So I just went to the last chapter of the match. So during the match, he said, "I believe this opening spot has worked well, not so much for the fans, but for me personally." So he's punching himself in the eye over and over again. "It does indeed remind me of the man I used to be, and the blood flowing fairly freely is a strange motivator and security blanket. Ultimately, those cuts would require 25 stitches that he gave himself."
Jesus.
So he starts, yeah. And because he had done the same spot on TV, but because they taped so far in advance, like they taped like 2 or 3 weeks of television at a time back then, he had done it in the ring and cut himself open, but he didn't think that he could do it in the ring again, and he was worried that he wouldn't bleed. So before the match, he actually cut himself and then covered it up, and then in the beginning of the match, he started punching himself over and over to get the blood flow going.
That's old school pro wrestler for you.
Yeah. At one point, Foley climbed to the top rope and Sting kicked him off, and he took a hard bump on his neck and upper back. Sting also gave him a backward superplex with both standing on the top rope. Crowd wasn't dead, but also not into it, considering as much given they put together a good match and did their best to execute it. And in theory, fans of the 90s would get them a little slack. But Foley's ankle was caught in the cage, so that allowed him to sell and the ankle for a while. So then I go back to his book to see how he explains this, and he says, I attempt to escape once again, escaping the cage, and this is where things very nearly take a real-life serious turn for the worse for me. I'm once again at the second turnbuckle when Sting cuts me off, this time with a stinger splash to the backs of my knees. This is a new twist on a patented move, and it's a creative cutoff spot, but as I fall, my toes become wedged into a hole in the mesh, and my body falls, leaving my ankle torqued at hideous angles. No, this is Mick Foley in his mid-40s, just beat to shit. And he says, I feel the strain on my ACL, and it feels like it's about to pop. I literally scream for help. But both Sting and referee Earl Hebner, along with all the wrestlers backstage, think it's just old Cactus reaching into his deep bag of trips. Wow, how did he do that? Boy, are they giving me too much credit. Sting finally realizes that an opponent screaming, Stinger, please help me, just might be in big trouble. And he and Hebner simultaneously free me from the modified tree of woe. And then, of course, right after this, they fight some more. They try to do the Montreal spot. At one point, Mick Foley drop kicks the cameraman. And then he actually he drop kicked the cameraman. So in the TNA cages back then, they had these big holes on the side of the cage for the cameraman to actually get in and get into the action.
I remember that.
He drop kicked the guy, and then he tries to escape the cage by going through the hole, but he gets Winnie the Pooh, and he's too big, and that's how Sting pulls him back in. And then they keep fighting. Foley ends up getting a barbed wire baseball bat. They introduce that, and then I'll go to the end of the match here. But Sting is almost at the top of the cage. I don't find an exciting way to climb down. I'm going to screw this thing up, so I decided to let it go. A moment later, I'm tumbling backward, free-falling for what seems like minutes, and even though the actual impact occurs less than a second later. So he's up on the top, and he just kind of falls off of the cage, and that's how he wins. The TNA World Heavyweight Championship belt is handed to me. I give the belt a kiss, and again, we're off the air. So they actually went long in the match, and they literally had seconds to go. So as soon as he gets the belt and he kisses it, they cut the feed, they go off the air, and then him and Sting. Yeah, it gets two and a half stars from Dave, but him and Sting feel like they did a pretty good job, all things considering their age and everything. The tickets sold, I think they did like 4,000 that night in Philadelphia, but which is a decent house for TNA. Yeah, decent house for TNA. But and that was, like I said, that was such an important match for Foley. He actually wrote an entire book about it, and
I'm gonna have to read this.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So he goes, all things considered, my age, my weight, my knees, my back, my thighs, my nerves, my dry mouth, the blue cage wasn't meant to be, the Sony Discman had forgotten to pack. Maybe I'll forever remember lockdown as the night I learned to stand up for myself, because after all, Tori Amos can't always be around. Because he used to listen to Tori Amos before his big matches. But yeah, they were pretty happy with it. I wouldn't say it was like a great match anybody needs to go out of the way to see, but it's like a historical match if you want to see kind of like a bookend, one of the all-time great matches in both of their guys' career at Beach Blast 92, and then to see them do it, 17 years later.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read this book and watch the match, because I've never seen either, so I'm interested. You sold me on it just as a curiosity point. I think I need to look at this.
Yeah, curious, and it's on YouTube for free on TNA's YouTube channel. So everybody go ahead and check that out. Man, this is fun. I love talking Sting's rivalries, man. This is always a lot of fun. So thanks everybody. And JD is about to pass out, so I'm gonna let him go to sleep. But
not obvious, huh?
Yeah. So everybody, thank you for being a Patreon subscriber. It's really important, and I really appreciate you guys being here. And until next time, mahalo.
Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A game. Made no rain from the track when we unite and spit. This isn't A game, better bring your A game. Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A game. Made no rain from the track.